So it's Linda Conley, and I'm at the Senior Center on Monday, October 27th, 2014, with Dave Nelson, who worked at the library with me for a while, so that's how I know Dave. But we're here again for the Oral History Project, where we hope stories and memories from the past will be made available to people now and way into the future, partly because the town is changing so rapidly, life is changing, so it'd be great to capture some memories of the past. So Dave, if you can tell us where you live and how long you've been living in the town, and begin that way.
Okay, I live in Woodville right now. I've lived in the house I'm in now for 44 years.
Beginning what year then, tell us?
1969 we bought that house, but I was born in Woodville, lived there all my life other than a couple of years when I was in the service. I was away from it, but otherwise I've been there all my life, and I'm a fifth generation Woodvilleite. My family's been there for years.
So tell us, for people that might not know, Woodville being considered as a little village of Hopkinton, so a little.
It's the capital of Hopkinton, actually.
Okay, and when you say Woodville, what area are you talking about?
Okay, the Woodville section is the western section of Hopkinton, Lake Whitehall, and the surrounding area. Between Westboro, Southboro, and Upton, that's Woodville, that whole little section. And it, not so much now, but the town now has evolved into pretty much all Hopkinton, but when I was a child, it was a village, and it was a typical New England community. Everybody knew everybody, cared for everybody, and you took care of everybody, and you knew everybody from one end of the village to the other. And as a kid, you didn't dare step out of line, because your mother would know before you got home what you'd done, because everybody took care of everybody, and kids could run free, you could go anywhere in town, in the village. I didn't have to worry about anything like you do today. But
so what year were you born?
I was born in 1941. And we lived in several different houses in Woodville. We moved around a little before we finally settled in at what's now 211. When I was growing up, it was 17 Wood Street, because Wood Street started where the village started, at the beginning of just west of 495, of the 495 overpass. And the numbering for the street started there. And then, I don't remember what year it was, but they renumbered the street, and they started it at the top of the hill by the traffic light of West Main Street and Wood Street. And they renumbered them all, renumbered all the houses on Wood Street. So that's when we became 211 instead of 17. Growing up, we had had two general stores, a post office, at one time, where the post office is now, that was one of the general stores. It was owned by my great uncle.
What was the name of that store?
It was Wells's General Store.
At the location of the current
And
post office.
it's where the post office is now. The building has been modified a little bit. There's a picture hanging in the dining room here at the senior center of what it was years ago. But as a kid, they had that was the only gas station, if you will, and it was just a couple of gas pumps that were located right there in front of the general store. It wasn't a garage or anything like you think today, like you see today, but it was just gas, and you got everything at the general store. They carried everything. My uncle.
And what was
we
your
had
uncle's
ice cream.
name? Uncle's name?
Well, there were several of them that were involved in it. The original postmaster of Woodville was Charles Mortimer, and he was my great uncle. Then another uncle, Joe Wells. He was the postmaster, and he ran the general store. And
So I'm just, so the,
Yep.
the general store was also the post office?
it was the
Oh,
post
yeah,
office.
yeah.
It was inside just in the one corner of the store was the post office, and it was a typical old New England general store. There was everything. There was penny candy, soda pop, all the essential dry goods, canned goods, groceries that you normally need. The ice cream used to come in, I think it was about 2-gallon cardboard containers, round containers, and when they got down to the end of a container, my uncle would take and scrape it all down, and he put it all in one container at the end of the ice cream freezer, and we called it skunk ice cream because it was, you got anything. If you went in and ordered a skunk ice cream cone, whatever came out in the scoop was what you got, and it was a mix of all the scraps of ice cream that were left in the different flavors. They had a cooler for water cool. All the soda pop came in bottles, and it was all kept in a water-cooled cooler, Coca-Cola cooler, big red cooler, and back then it was a nickel a bottle and no deposit. And so we get soda there. They had candy counter. We had penny candy for a penny. There was outside, they did have on the side of the building, there was an air hose for people to use to blow up their tires and so forth. Much like the air hoses that you see at gas stations now. But this one was just a compressor was in the cellar, and It came out, and there was a hose hooked to it, and they had taken an old rim from one of the old cars, when it was a big open rim, probably 2 feet across, and they had it mounted on the side of the building, and they wrapped the hose around it. Well, we, as kids, we used that as the backstop for our stickball games. We played stickball, which consisted of a pink tennis ball, or the pink ball the size of a tennis ball. Cut it in half, and that was what you used for a ball, because it flew something like a frisbee pattern. And for a bat, we had a broomstick. That was it. And you scored by how far you hit the ball. If we went to the edge of the street, which was probably 20 feet, it was a home run. If it went to other natural markings, the sidewalk and so forth, it was scored differently, but that was what
So
we
was
did.
this what you played in front of the store?
Yep.
Okay.
You just,
That was where you always
a
played?
couple
Yeah.
kids would show up, and so you'd, pick up, you left the ball and the stick right there on the ground and under the air hose, and anybody could pick it up and play. You had 2 people, one to throw, one to pitch, and one to hit. And
So this is in the 40s.
yeah, this would be
50s, 40s,
yep,
50s,
late
yeah.
40s. Let's see what else here.
But so they're running that store plus their delivery guys, postmen.
There was no delivery. It was
Okay.
It was only post office boxes.
Right.
Uh,
But they would do that. That was their
that
purpose
was
too.
yeah.
So you buy
it
candy
was-
from your uncle. Plus, if you want your
Yep.
mail, he would
Yep.
take care of you with the mail.
There was a well, it was, the boxes were a large, like a bookcase, only they were small compartments, glass front on them, and there was a number on the front of the box and the outside of the box. So you could tell if you had any mail, you just walked up and looked in your window of your box, and if there was stuff in there,
Yeah.
you went over to the counter and asked for your mail.
Yeah.
And, it was a lot different than it is today.
People congregate at the store too. I mean, place
Yeah,
to go
it was
meet
a,
and,
it was
you know,
a
social
meeting place. The picture in the dining room here at the senior center shows the front porch on it. It had a big front porch.
Wish we had the picture.
And
here. Yeah.
had a long wooden bench on the front porch that you could sit and drink your soda or eat your ice cream, or just
Sit.
wait and sit and wait for somebody to come along to talk to. What else? Help me out here.
Well, you want to talk about your mother. So your mother's side. I mean, your father's side was not from Hopkinton, but your mother's.
No, my father's side, they lived in Hopkinton a couple of times, but not regular. Not
Not long
long
term.
term.
Yeah.
My mother's family, her mother and father,
And tell us her name.
they were the Peasleys.
Peasleys?
Peasley, and they lived in Worcester for a brief period. My grandfather was had a business of auto tops. Back then, the automobiles back in the 30s and before, the automobiles had canvas tops, and he did auto tops and upholstery. He had a shop up in Worcester, and that's where so they lived in Worcester for a brief period, a couple of years when my mother was little, and then they came to Woodville, and my mother's brother still lives in the house that they.
And tell us your
They came to.
mother's name and your
My mother
and your-
was
yeah.
Christine Peasley. My father was Scott Nelson, and
And the uncle that's still there?
and Bill Peasley is my uncle, and he still lives in the house that he grew up in.
Do you know why they came to Hopkinton? Any reason in particular?
I don't recall. I don't recall that there was any particular reason why they came here.
And was he still doing the car tops at that time?
Yep. He
Commuting?
He drove to Worcester, and that was. There was a lot of things. Woodville was a great place to grow up as a kid. Well, with Halloween coming up now, we could go. You didn't need an adult chaperone to protect you and make sure you were safe. You went out, 2 or 3 kids together, and you started at one end of the village and went all the way to the other end.
You want to mention the names of the kids that you went trick or treating with? No.
There's a lot of them.
Okay.
So they, we always. We got the Woodville kids, because it was 3 miles to Hopkinton, we didn't really, we had to go to school. We went to school in Hopkinton, but the other activities, social activities, or at least when we were probably 10 and under, were centered around Woodville, and Hopkinton was Hopkinton. And
Somebody asked you where you're from? What would you say?
Woodville.
Yeah.
Everybody that's from Woodville will tell you they're from Woodville, not from Hopkinton. They may admit that it's a part of Hopkinton, but it's.
Well, actually, and too, how are you gonna? If you're a kid, it's kind of there's no sidewalk to walk to town.
Yeah, we had one sidewalk.
You did? Because there's not anymore.
There was a sidewalk on Wood Street that ran just about. Well, they've extended it past. It only went as far as it started at what's now 204. I think it's 204 Wood Street. When you first started coming into houses, that was where the sidewalk started, and It ran to the Woodville Rod and Gun Club. That far, and that was the only sidewalk we had, and that's still it. They have extended it on up to almost to Fruit Street now, but
Right.
it's still the only. Well, there's a couple of other small sidewalks that they've put in as they developed areas, subdivisions. Over the years, they've had to put sidewalks in them, but they're
So
not
did-
really
did-
connected to anything. They're just within the subdivision.
Yeah. Was it, and it, Woodville is wooded, is it pretty much the same? I mean, the in-town has become more forested in some ways, and a
Well,
lot of fields have grown in. What
It was
that
it
like
was
then?
all a lot of farms.
What kind of
over in
farms?
Woodville. Dairy farms. There was a lot of dairy farms in town, and but those have all gone, and most of the land has been developed now by builders, and they've got houses. The town it's grown with Hopkinton.
So Woodville Dairy Farms
So-
also. Can you like name any of them or pinpoint where they?
The biggest ones was Lauder's Farm, which is was right up behind the post office,
Yeah.
and that was a good sized dairy herd. They sold milk, dairy products, but the other big farm was Cornell's, which was over on North Street, and they had a lot of land, and then let's see where else. There was a lot of open land, fields and so forth that were no longer used for raising cows or anything. They were just open fields that are all developed now as housing developments. And on Fruit Street, way down Fruit Street where Roosevelt is now.
The farms, yeah,
the
Roosevelt Farms, yeah.
That was a turkey farm.
Cool.
They raised White Holland turkeys.
White Holland
Yeah, it was
turkeys?
White Holland turkeys. It's a white feathered turkey, big commercial turkey, and they raised those commercially to sell. And what else had a farm?
Do you ever work on a farm?
I did some at Ladders. I grew up pretty much on that. Was right down the street from where I live, so.
So what'd they have you do?
And so we just it was more general things, general chores. We were only kids, so we couldn't get involved in a lot of things, but it was a community, and we, as teenagers, we were allowed to use the fields for our first cars, not non-registered junk cars that.
And without a
ran.
license, right? Did you have to have a license to?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
He stayed
Yeah.
on the farm, and so you didn't have to, and nobody bothered you or said anything or wasn't
So how
anything they
old were
could
you
do
when
anyway.
you were first driving a junk car on somebody's field?
My first car I drove, I had up there, I was probably 13, 14 years old. I learned to drive on a tractor, just because I spent a lot of time on that farm, and that's what you learn to do.
Mm-hmm.
But most everybody in the village worked. Most of the men worked at Bay State Abrasives over in Westboro, which it used to be. Now it's where Roach Brothers, that whole development now.
Bay State Abrasives?
It was Bay State Abrasives.
Yeah.
It was a big abrasive company. They made grinding wheels and sandpaper and things like that. And
see, that's a different America where kids, all your peers, your friends, your parents work together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the
Same
men worked
place.
at Bay State. A few of them, a lot of Hopkinton people worked over there, actually, but most of the Woodville population, the men worked at Bay State.
And your dad did too?
My dad did for 40 something
So maybe that's why
years.
they ended up in Woodville. He got the work there and
No, he
settled
was-
nearby? No?
No.
No?
Well, he started over there about the time that Mom and Dad got married, but I think, but
They were there before then.
there was, yeah, they were, he was here. Then, my best friend lived about 5 houses up the street from me, right at the beginning of the village. And that was another small farm that at one time, they raised, that, it wasn't his family, but the family that owned it before him, raised chickens. So there was large chicken coops out, chicken houses out behind the main house and the barn. But when he moved into town, we were very good friends, and we actually started our first business together. We were probably 12 years old. And back then you didn't have all the restrictions and health laws and all this stuff that you got now.
Bureaucracy,
And
huh?
bureaucracy, and so we pooled our allowance. We bought about 25 chicks, little chicks, newly hatched chicks. We raised them in the barn at his house till they were big enough to use as broiler chickens, and then we'd kill them, clean them.
Do you
And-
break their necks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Fluff.
clean them and sold them in the village.
Wow.
Back then, I mean, we come home from school and find out, who was going to have chicken for supper that night, and we'd just go down and kill off that many chickens,
And deliver them?
clean them,
Yeah.
and hop on a bicycle and deliver them
That's great.
to in the town, in the village.
And what was his family name?
Kramer.
Kramer,
Yeah.
K-R-A-M-E-R. Yeah.
Yeah, and they moved to New York. They came from New York originally, because his mother, I guess, did, and they moved back to just northeast of New York City, and in 1954, and so. Well, we had.
Yeah, chicken. How long did you do that, do you think?
We only had the one batch of chickens, but it was our. Yeah, it was a business. We kept track of what it cost for feed and what it cost for the chickens, and then what we made for selling them. We split the profits.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
It was an enterprising little thing, but you couldn't do that today.
Yeah, yeah.
But
how about Lake Whitehall? One of your memories
Lake
of
Whitehall.
Lake Whitehall? Like what'd you do there?
I grew up in Lake Whitehall. I learned to swim when I was about a year old. I mean, from the time I was, my grandparents had a cottage up on the lake. They lived down in the village, in the big house. They were there. That was year round, but in the summertime, they moved up to. They had a cottage up on Winter Street.
Is that still there?
No, it's been torn down and replaced with a modern day house.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, they went up there for the summer, and that's where they lived in the summertime, so we spent a lot of time at the lake, swimming, fishing. Back then, the lake was nice and clean, and you could swim in it anywhere.
Yeah, none of that weed
No
that's kind of overtaken.
seaweed or
yeah.
any of that other
yeah.
stuff that
chokes it
has
now.
taken over has caused problems now. We all grew up, you know. We swam every summer in the lake. We had boats up there. We were boating, fishing.
And that was mainly Woodville people too, or did
Yeah,
people come down
yeah.
from town?
There was some people, not so much from town. We used to get some people from Westboro. Once in a while, somebody from Westboro would come over.
Yeah, or did people summer there, have cottages that came
The
from?
people that summered up there, there was a few natives like my grandparents, but most of the other cottages were people from in around Boston, Newton, in that, you know, Wellesley, that area. They came out. This is their summer,
yeah,
their summer
yeah.
home, and they came out to the summer place.
Sounds great for a kid, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
It was good. I mean, the freedoms were invaluable. I mean, you just couldn't put a price on them. You just haven't got them today. Kids today can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, all the kids had bicycles. You rode anywhere in town. We played baseball on a vacant lot on Winter Street, right next to the Farah Company, which made fire trucks.
Right. That's still there, isn't it?
Yeah. The company's still there. The the lot now is pretty much the front yard of a house that they built back on the back end of that lot. But for years we all played baseball up there, and as kids in the village, we all got together, all the time.
And probably not much traffic coming through on Wood Street.
No,
which
there wasn't anywhere as near the traffic that you got now.
Quiet.
Even they redid Route 135 in about 1953, and they stripped it right down to the gravel. For a whole summer was a mess that year, because they stripped it right down to the gravel and then repaved it, and until they got the pavement down, it was a dust city. Any cars that came by kicked up dust. But it was progress.
The little Baptist church, was that your church?
The Baptist church was the only church in Woodville. The original church is gone now. The building is gone. That's a new building that's there now. And the building next door, which is what they use for a chapel, that was a library, an extension of the Hopkinton Library. It was the Woodville Library. It was only open.
Woodville branch.
Woodville branch. It was only open on Saturdays. Didn't have a great selection of books, but it was a library.
Did you go to that church?
Yeah, and I grew up in that church. My family before me grew up in that church.
Because I heard that it didn't matter that well, at least somebody told me that it was more of a community church, and even though it's technically Baptist, it was just everybody went, whether you were Catholic.
Yeah, it was the only church in
village.
The village. There was churches uptown, but people in the village pretty much went to the church. It had the sanctuary was on the second floor. The first floor was a big hall that they used for social functions. Had a lot of church suppers there. And back then, it was common to have a church supper on a Saturday night. The other thing that they had for social activity that was right near there was at the fire station, the Woodville Fire Station, which is now gone. Well, I shouldn't say it's gone, because they built the new one next to the post office. But for probably 100 years before that,
the opposite side of the road, right?
It was on the opposite side of the road from where it is now, down by the little pond. It was Firehouse Pond.
Right.
And that one had a hall upstairs, and they used to have card parties, bridge parties every Saturday night, and they'd get 6, 7, 8 tables of people to come and play cards.
Married couples kind of thing, or everybody?
Yeah,
children running around?
Pretty much everybody. There wasn't too many kids, because it was at night, and the kids stayed home at night, which made for babysitting jobs for the teenagers. So we all babysat for families in the village as teenagers. But the church was was, the history of the church was that it came from Westboro. It was originally the Baptist Church in Westboro. When they when they built a new Baptist church in Westboro, a new building, that winter they pulled the Woodville Church, which was just what was the upper part. It didn't have the lower floor. It was just the sanctuary. They hauled it across Cedar Swamp with horses in the winter on sleds. They sledded it over and put it there.
Do you know when that, what year about? I mean, that's recorded.
Let me think. It was somewhere around late 1700s.
So long, yeah.
Yeah, I think late 1700s, early 1800s, I guess. About 1815 or something like that. And then they raised the building, put the second floor under it, and they used that for social functions, for Sunday schools. They had a big kitchen.
So was that your mother's church when she was a little kid too?
That was my mother's. My grandmother was organist there for a long period of time.
So what years would that have been?
I couldn't tell you at the moment. My memory isn't that good.
Well, quite a while ago, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, she was the organist over there. My mother sang in the choir.
Just gonna shut this.
Clara Rollins lived beyond that, was the librarian at the library in Woodville. Then when they tore the church down, structurally, it just became structurally unsafe. So they had to tear it down and the building down and built the new one. And that's when they connected it to what was the library. That became a chapel, and the church.
So just about how long ago was that?
That was in 1985,
Okay.
maybe, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
You probably know more of this than I
No.
being the historian.
No.
But yeah, that was about the time that they built that.
Okay.
And
Any Woodville stories? You know, things that happened, crazy events, or things that stand out in your mind? Changes.
there's been a lot of changes. I
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see the day that a house in Woodville would go for over $1 million.
Yeah.
And there's several of them now that are valued at 7 figures. But I mean, it was.
So it was a working class
It
neighborhood.
was a working class community. There wasn't any really wealthy people.
Well, maybe the people that came
There's-
from Wellesley in the summer, huh? Newton and Wellesley, maybe?
Yeah, but they were just summer tourists.
Yeah. Not the real deal.
They just came out here for the summer and
Yeah,
went back in the fall.
yeah,
So they weren't really,
yeah.
and they had cottages just like all the rest of the people. They were just simple cottages. There was no running water on no town water on Winter Street, so everybody got their water from a well or from a spring. There's a lot of springs up in that area
Mm.
that we got out.
Those woods are pretty dense now. Were they dense like that then, or is it kind of grown in?
Yeah,
around
well,
the
it's
lake?
grown in some, but it was always, you know, plenty
Wooded,
of wooded area. But it's changed. It's changed a lot. There's been a lot of building.
Yeah, with building.
A lot of the open land has been developed, and
Yeah, and certainly the farms are
I
gone.
mean, where the house that I live in was built in 1957, but prior to that, that was a cornfield. When I was a kid, that was a cornfield that was maintained and harvested by the Cornell brothers down on North Street.
Same Cornell. Cornell's.
We need to cut here for a minute.
Okay. All right, so Dave is back, and I asked
Okay.
Dave about his mother, because his mother she was born in the town and grew up in the town,
She was
and she's
she was
Peasley.
born in Worcester, I
Yeah.
think, but she only lived there. They only lived there a couple of years, and then they moved back to Woodville. Her mother's mother, my grandmother's family, was the Mortimer family, and they
Mortimer.
were Mortimer,
Yeah.
and they went back 3 generations, two generations, I guess. They'd been in Woodville.
Is that what kind of
Back
name
in
is
the-
Mortimer?
And it's English.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, they go back in Woodville history for
Wow.
a ways.
What's a
back in
name?
the-
Mortimer. What's the first name for Mortimer? I'll dig something.
Jacob, I think, was the first one. They're all buried up in Evergreen Cemetery.
In the Woodville Cemetery. Yeah. That's so cool, Dave. You know, that's really cool to have roots like that.
The Evergreen Cemetery is the butter to my backyard, but I know I knew probably 40% anyway, at least 40% of the people that are buried over there. And I know the families and the family names and so forth for probably most of them, of the people that are over there. So there's a lot of Woodville history over there. But,
We got a lot of Civil War guys buried there.
There are some Civil War people. There's a lot of interesting things in the cemetery. I don't know if there's anywhere else, at least in Hopkinton, where there is a metal. There's a plot that has all metal markers, the foot markers, and then there's a big obelisk right in the, probably 7 feet tall, right in the middle of the plot, and it's all metal. They're all, I don't know, it's not tin. I don't know what kind of metal it is, but
I wonder why.
But
Somebody
it's
decided on that.
existed. It's existed for many years, because I think the dates go back well back into the 1800s on that one. But there's a lot of interesting stones over there. There was some characters, if you will, some interesting people that lived up the other end of the lake. The Cheneys, they were different. Unique, I guess would be a better word. Not different, but they were unique. And one of them, there's actually just beyond the chapel in the Evergreen Cemetery, there's a funny looking stone. It's actually a meteorite, probably 2 feet in diameter.
Really?
And that's it's a grave marker for the Cheney family.
That's really neat.
Yeah, there's other unique stones over there. There's a corner, the upper right-hand corner of the back right-hand corner of Evergreen is paupers' graves.
Oh, okay.
They're all unmarked.
Okay, yeah,
But,
yeah.
that's where they buried the people that couldn't afford to be
have
buried.
Yeah. Town
Yeah.
paid for that. Yeah.
Yep. And they just dug a hole, put them in, and there
So
they
those
are.
that would be Woodville paupers,
Hmm.
right? And they would be
Probably, yeah.
Or else
Because there was most all the people over there were Woodville families, Woodville people. We had a lot of factories in Woodville before my time, back in the 1800s. We had carriage factory.
the Coolidge carriage factory.
Yeah, Coolidge, and there was a livery stable. There was a mill right next to where the fire station is
You know
now.
what kind of mill?
I don't remember what they did there. I know the Coolidge mill Coolidge factory was across the street, next to the pond, and that they got a lot of their power from the waterfall right there. They use water power. Right now, and now there's just it's all state property, but it's all natural trees and brush and stuff. But back turn of the 1900s, turn of that century, there were 5 houses along that side of the west side of the pond there that were built to house the factory workers. And I think 4 of those houses are still in existence. They moved them to other parts of town. But
there's a couple photographs. There was a schoolhouse too, I think, that was.
Well, schoolhouses
Yeah.
were it's, the Woodville Rod and Gun was the schoolhouse. My uncle, my mother's older brother, actually went to school at the gun club. That was
When it was at the gun club? Because there
when-
were some
when it was
buildings
a
that
school,
were, yeah.
yeah.
One-room schoolhouse,
uh,
kind of.
might have been one room or maybe one or two, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a small school. He actually went to school there. My mother never did. My mother went to center school and Stedgy Prep, the old high school on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was another schoolhouse down on the south end of Whitehall,
Mm-hmm.
at the corner of School Street and Pond Street. That was another one-room schoolhouse that the people up on Bear Hill, up in that area.
Yeah, I think they called that the Bear Hill,
That was Bear
Yeah.
Hill. That was
number 7, I think. it
that was a number a different. It was a suburb of Woodville. The people that
Bear
lived
Hill?
up there were Woodville, but it was another little
pocket.
community. But
Yeah.
they didn't. All they had was the schoolhouse. They didn't have the store or anything like that, or the church. There was none of that was up there.
A little more isolated, huh?
Yeah, and then let's see what else.
No big events that you can think of. World War II? You were a little
I
teeny
don't remember
kid.
too
Yeah.
much about
You would have been a little
World War
guy.
II
Yeah.
as far as Woodville went. We do have an honor roll in Woodville for Woodville men that were in and women that were in World War II. That's right in front of the church on Wood Street. The fire station that was there it was a substation of Hopkinton, but it was other than being a substation by title, it was an independent fire station. It housed, before the motorized trucks,
Mm-hmm.
it housed the Edward Hopkins hand pump
Mm-hmm.
truck, hand pump fire.
Horse-drawn?
It was horse-drawn, and it was and it was hand-drawn. Mostly hand-drawn because it didn't have to go very far. I don't recall a horse rigging on that, but we had a fireman's muster in Woodville in 1959, and it was celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Edward Hopkins winning
Yeah, that was
the
a big
trophy.
thing.
They won. They used to go to firemen's musters were big, and it was competitions between hand pumpers everywhere. And the Edward Hopkins was a championship pumper, and we restored it completely, and they actually used it for the muster. And I'm not sure where it is now. It was in a garage up next to where Farrah Company was on Winter Street. But I'm not positive in the last few years where it is.
There's a guy in New Hampshire who's purchased at least one that has been in touch with the town. Yeah, I don't know if it's that one.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's still in town or not.
All right, Dave, it's telling me that either that the battery's dead or that it's running low.
Okay.
So I don't want to take your time
Okay.
if it's not recording, but I've really enjoyed hearing about Woodville. You know, this is pretty amazing.
It is. It's
Yeah.
It's got an amazing history.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it right here in this building. There's pictures of Woodville
We should have had you
that
look at them, you know,
Yeah.
hold them up. Yeah,
yeah, we could have brought that one in from
yeah,
the kitchen. We can
Yeah.
do that sometime.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a village. It was I mean, we were a big family more than anything. The whole village.
Yeah, it's gone.
Everybody
It's gone.
knew everybody and cared for everybody.